on.
So thanks very much, everybody, for joining. This is the first within this first seminar. My name is Jose Maria Valderas, Chema Valderas. I'm a GP and a professor of medicine at the National University of Singapore, where I head the Department of Family Medicine. It is a pleasure to chair this seminar of the Wonca Working Party in research and the webinar series, the first one of a series that we will be having with this particular set of topics on patient and public involvement, research networks, and hopefully later this year on epidemiological studies. The plan for the So the plan will be a brief introduction of the topic, presentation by Felicity, then by Maria, and then one by myself, each on different experiences on the issue that is the focus of the seminar. And then we will end up with some questions and answers from sessions with questions and answers and discussion. This webinar is recorded so that we may be available online, which I think will be particularly convenient, given that it was announced with a short timeline, and also I think it was interesting that people in some time zones felt that it was a bit inconvenient. I think that people in the time zones of the presenters will be very familiar with many seminars, many such options not being available at the time that is suitable for us. So I'm not at all as conveying this is payback time, simply saying that, okay, we're an international society and we need to make accommodations for everybody. So suffice to say that it will be recorded, will be available subsequently. And we also, as a new approach to these seminars, we're also aiming to submit as e-posters for Wonca conferences, in this case for the conference in Lisbon, based on the material presented today. Whether we're also able to turn it into a paper remains to be seen. Hopefully, yes, but we will see. If any of the participants, by the way, would also be interested in contributing to any of these further dissemination efforts, please let me know, and I will see how we can engage you in the process. It may not be feasible to engage all of us and all of you, and it may not be even adequate depending on your ability to contribute to them. But as much as feasible, we really want to have you engaged. Everybody with patient and public involvement not in research is not necessarily a new topic, but is one that for which there is huge variation in terms of how it is being taken up in different countries, even by different researchers and communities. So to a degree, there is, in some countries, there is a very strong experience in the area, long track record, and then the name for the concept and the concept itself varies to some degree. We will leave it to each of the presenters describes what's the situation in their own country and even what's their conceptualization. But just to provide a bit of a common ground, so what is patient and public involvement is an approach that ensures that patients and members of the public of the information derived from research studies, and one of the ways in which we can make it more relevant is by making sure that they are involved in all the different stages of research. and in some of them it will be more appropriate than others. But one of the critical things to separate from previous approaches, not participants or subjects in the research. They are, to a degree, part of the, in varying roles, part of the research team. Perhaps the most important, I mean, the one, not the most important, but one way in which you can think about this, for instance, is if you think in terms of a focus group with patients in that aims to inform parts of the subsequent parts of the study. If patients are recruited in the role as patients, but for the purposes with them as participants of subjects, that's not PPI. But if you have patient and public involvement, I mean, but if those same patients are other patients are used to shape the how the project is conceived, designed, to thinking in terms of what would be the recruitment strategies, to advise how to the results from that previous focus group could be should be interpreted. That's a role, for instance, for PPI. And I would argue, and is that family medicine is ideally placed for promoting PPI in a research culture for PPI within the whole system, because we are uniquely placed in the system. We have a very unique relationship with our populations, and it's not only, I mean, the unique relationship in terms, it's also the reach. We can reach a much larger segment of the population. We should reach that other professionals can. So if PPI is to work at all, it certainly needs to be strong in family medicine. So after this brief introduction, it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Felicity Goodyear-Smith. Felicity, you will all know her as past chair of the Working Party, and with a very distinguished career as a family medicine academic, with numerous contributions in form of publications, books, and a very well-known figure in Wonca. So, with further ado, I would like to hand over to Felicity.
Oh, thank you very much, Chairman, and welcome everybody. I'm going to talk about a project I'm involved in about improving the health outcomes for Pacific people in New Zealand. Aotearoa New Zealand is what we're calling it. And this is a co-design project, and it involves engagement of the Pacific community. So I'm presenting on behalf of a research collective. That's a community group called the Pacific People's Health Advisory Group, a Pacific Practice-Based Research Network, and also researchers at the University of Auckland. The New Zealand research environment, we don't actually talk about patient and public involvement in health research. It's not a term widely used, but our funders always ask us to acquire evidence of impact of both the direct and the indirect influence on people, on communities, on society, including improvements to health or to other factors such as social, economic, or cultural environment benefits for New Zealanders. And so when you have co-design with communities, this ensures engagement and health and hence impact. So next slide, please, Gemma. So this particular research project, this journey started in 2016 when I was going to the international conference NAPCRAG in Colorado, the US, and I was invited to take a clinician and a patient to this pre-conference workshop called PACE, or Patient and Clinician Engagement. So I invited a GP colleague, Tanner Fishman, and she invited a patient, Rose Lamont, who was a Samoan teacher, and the three of us went to this conference as what was called a triad, with a patient, a GP, and a researcher. And at this conference, we learned about communities engaging in research, and Rose got very inspired. And when she came home to New Zealand, she set up the Pacific People's Health Advisory Group, or known as PHAG, to discuss research and how this group might do research to help the health and well-being of Pacific people in New Zealand. Next slide, Chema. And so this is the original PHAG group, just in 2017 when they were set up. Rose is the one in the middle at the back. And next slide. I just want to say these people come from a range of ethnic backgrounds. They're different ages, different. Someone's retired, some are young, different walks of life, different jobs. And the Pacific people in New Zealand come from the Pacific Islands, mostly the Polynesian Islands, which I've got a circle on there, and some of the Micronesia. And they have immigrated from these Pacific Islands to New Zealand. And in some cases, there's more Pacific people from these islands living in Auckland in New Zealand than live in their original islands. And generally in Auckland, they live in an area called South Auckland, and they tend to have socio-economic and health disparities compared to the Western population. Next slide. So in 2018, the GP Tanner Fishman and we got together a group of representatives from general practices in South Auckland who look after lots of Pacific people. And so sometimes they were GPs, they were also nurses or receptionists. And this became the Pacific Practice-Based Research Network. And that combined with the PHAG group and the University of Auckland researchers, we formed the Pacific Research Collective. Next slide. And so for a community group to be effective, they need to be empowered. And so a senior research colleague of mine, Pacific Research Tongan, Malachi Ofanoa, pictured there on the left, and myself ran workshops for the PHAG group and also for the clinical group on basic research methodology, how to ask questions that are answerable, and also some wonderful Pacific research models that we have used to help direct our research. And so there you can see everybody there at some of the workshops, learning about what makes a doable, answerable research question. Next. And then we had workshops to actually generate questions, and the groups generated lots of questions. And then we had a further workshop where we prioritized questions so that they did it with little post-it notes and moved them around until they got the top 2 questions. And the top 2 questions address issues of gout and rheumatic fever. And both these conditions are very high prevalence in Pacific people, and they have quite high causes of morbidity. And they're largely in fact genetic, very large genetic components to both these conditions. So Malachi and I said, okay, well, we're going to start answering these questions. And we started off with masters and summer students because we didn't need any funding. And then we applied for research grants. And eventually we got some reasonable Health Research Council grants. And then we employed 2 postdocs, one to deal with the gout question and one to deal with the rheumatic fever question. Okay, next one. So this is now our core research team. So on the left, we've got Malachi, who's the senior researcher. Below is Rose, who is the leader of the PHAG group. Our 2 postdocs, Samuela Ofanoa and Siobhan Tuakai on the top. And then we have 2 Pacific GPs, Samoan and Tongan, Marianne Heather and Hina Lutui, who are representative of our practice-based research network and who are our Pacific GPs in our project. So they're just the core members of the team, of course, as well as myself. Next slide. So how we've been running this is that we've been using the same method for both projects. And first of all, we did systematic reviews of the international literature to find out what's already been tried in these areas. And then we also did stock takes of what's been tried in New Zealand and what's been evaluated. And this was more of a grey literature review. We looked at clinical data, looking at quantitative assessments of the burden on Pacific people of these two issues and of treatment options, and we looked at the trends over the past 5 years to look at, has what's already been tried in New Zealand been working? Are things getting any better? And then we looked at co-designing interventions and implementing and evaluating, and we built on existing knowledge. So we presented to the groups, this is what we already know, this is what's been tried, this is what's worked, this is what may not have worked. What can you come up with that actually might be more effective for particularly addressing Pacific people with these conditions? So Samuela Ofanoa led the gout project and Siobhan Turcoy led the rheumatic fever one, but actually the teams worked together on both projects in parallel. Both Sam and Siobhan are working closely together on both projects. It's just one's leading one, one's leading the other. And we're involving the PHAG group and the practice-based research network every step of the way. So next slide. So every step that we do with a workshop, and we do it with the entire group. Now, soon after we started, as you'll notice, we got together about 2019, and we got the grants the end of 2019, and of course, we then went into lockdown with COVID, and we were very surprised, but the groups took to using Zoom incredibly well, and we ran the same workshops for half-a-day workshops over Zoom as we've been doing face-to-face, even though Pacific people do like to get together and be very collective people. And we found that some of the more senior members, other members would help them with the Zoom so that they could actually, everybody could engage. And then, of course, since we've come back to a sort of normal life after COVID, we're again, as you can see at the bottom slides, we're again, yes, there was a bit of a lag to the slides, I see, Gemma. So you can move to the next slide now, but you can see that we're now back to face again. So really, the key learnings that we've got from this project, and it's really still ongoing, is that co-designing is designing with, not for, and that the community need to be decision makers from the very beginning, and they're the ones who actually came up with the research questions, but they also need to be empowered so that they can actually be active participants in research. So they had got stuck for a while until Malachi and I came along and actually helped them understand the basic principles of research and how to ask a question that's answerable. When they're truly involved, this community will sustain involvement over years, and they're still just as engaged as ever. They still come to all the workshops. They don't want to, they're half-day workshops. They don't want to leave. They're incredibly engaged with this whole process. Now, clearly, to involve community groups, every step of a project takes time. And so our projects, we've actually just got an extension. We're nearly at the end of the gout project now. We've got a 6-month extension because it does take longer than you anticipate, but it's so well worthwhile because once you've got a community engaged like this, they've got ownership of this of these findings. They're going to disseminate our findings. These are their interventions that they've developed. They're going to be our very best champions and ambassadors for what we've designed. And the next slide, I think that's about it. Yeah, so this is a very productive team. We've published what I think is about, there's 10 there. I think we've got 2 more currently under, 4 more under review. So it's 14 papers in the last few years. So as well as actually, but as well as actually presenting and publishing, there is a lot of dissemination about our findings. This Pacific people are incredibly sort of strong users of social media, and so a lot of our findings also get disseminated quite widely on social media. And so to me, it's been a very rewarding journey, and it's ongoing. And I think to me, it's sort of research that's worth doing, worthwhile, and that the community have ownership of. Thank you, Gemma. I think we'll probably go on to the next one and have questions at the end. Is that right?
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. I mean, it's so impressive to see this level of production, specifically focusing, I mean, benefiting from patient and public involvement. I hope we will be able to come back to some of this in the discussion. We have still another 26 minutes or so. So with two more presentations and a bit of a discussion, which I think would be useful also for the benefit of the, by now, our 7 participants, in addition to us presenters, and also for the people who may also be able to get back to this in the recorded version. So without further, so let's please move on, transition to the next presentation by Dr. Maria Sofía Cuba from Peru, who will be talking about PPI experience specifically related to dementia. Sofía, over to you.
Thank you, Gemma. Good night here in Peru. I am going to talk of a specific project we have in Cayetano Heredia University. This is a project that is founded by NIHR, and it has collaboration with other universities in UK. But in Peru, the university is Cayetano Heredia, and we are doing under the group Chronicles. And the project name is Impact Salud. Next, please. Impact Salud is a project that is going to be in its 2nd year, so we have 2 more years. I am going to explain a little bit more. First, Chema asked me to talk a little bit about the regulation in Latin America or in Peru, and especially in Peru, I found no regulation about patient and public involvement. Only there is a regulation in clinical trials that says that in the CAI, in the ethics committees, the ethics committees must be multidisciplinary, and one of the members must be someone of the civil society. Even that this happens, no, it is in the law, but it's not always happening. And these people in the ethics committee, the role is to share insights in their experience in the community from which the research are likely to come. I think it's similar in other countries, so we don't have another specific regulation. Next, please. So talking about why we choose dementia and why we think this is an issue that is not related only to developing data about epidemiological findings. It's something that is increasing in low middle income countries. The tendency is that is reducing in high income countries. There's also this tendency of dementia with comorbidities that are not well controlled in countries like Peru, because we, in the primary care, we do not have a big approach to chronic diseases. Most of our primary care facilities are very oriented to maternal and child care, and not to chronic diseases, and probably not to dementia also, to dementia care. Next, please. So we have we order our project in forward packages. One is one related to trying to study the system, and in that part we also contacted community. One is more epidemiological thing, related to develop a screening tool and determine which screening tool could be better for Peru, for example. And we have also feasibility study pilot to know if a care team navigator approach could help caregivers of people with dementia in Peru. We have a part of economical study, and we have a work package dedicated to the project management, but also the communication and the involvement of the community. Next, please. So he is Don Carlos. Don Carlos is one of the researchers of the project, and he is a person that is a caregiver for his wife that she has dementia, and she was involved in developing the project, and now he's involved as a researcher. The thing is that Don Carlos is very enthusiastic, and he is giving us a lot of insight in many parts of the project, but he's the only one person we could involve for many things, the time, his capacity, but at the same time, he's not representative of all Peruvians, because he's a middle-class professional caregiver. And I think this situation makes us think, how can we involve in research people that are more vulnerable, people that usually do not have the time to join researchers to spread their voice or continue in a research during years. But we have Don Carlos, and he is still in our project. Next, please. These are some results of what we were finding. What I wanted to show is that we were trying to ask patients with dementia and carers and health workers and community health workers about the pathway of the dementia care in Peru. Next, please. Inside the project, another thing we are doing is we have this advisory panel of people with the lived experience. In this case, it's not people with dementia, but carers. This panel has been formed with a diverse group of caregivers from different backgrounds, genders, social levels, and it holds regular working meetings. They help us in the validation of research findings, designing and the production of communication and awareness campaign. I think they found that this place of being involved in advisory committee new, but they enjoy using their voice to advise the group of researchers. Next, please. So maybe because of the time, I will move. Our project is in 4 territories in Peru: Tumbes, that is the coast; Loreto, that is Django, Lima, and Huancayo. So we have diverse people in our project. We're exploring the diverse people in the country. Next, please. And also we are trying to use technology. So our life experience advisory committee is going to help us also in knowing if, for example, a chatbot or a personalized care navigator is good for them. We started with some qualitative study, and we found some preferences of them about. In Peru, it's very common to use now WhatsApp. It's very, very common. The original intervention was only by phone and email, and is not something that usually, especially email, something that elderly people use in Peru. Next, please. So this is one, I think is the last one, is one photo of our leaf. We found also that even we have the leaf we have meetings of the leaf. Also, we use virtual meetings, Zoom meetings, to have the team advising us. And we found that they are senior people, and they move very well with the Zoom and give us advice in that way. So I think that's the last.
Okay, thank you so much, Sofía, for the presentation and for sharing the experience from Peru. Now it's my time. I mean, we have 15 more minutes, so I'll be brief to ensure we can have the sufficient time for discussion. My name is José, and I've already introduced myself. My experience with PPI benefits from my previous. I've been for over 15 years working in the UK before moving to Singapore. And although we are not necessarily discussing the UK today, I think it's relevant background information. I was mentioning before that some countries seem to have had perhaps a longer tradition of PPI involvement, and the PPI, I may be able to add more information in the discussion later, but basically it's very well established, both in terms of even for research panels that have multiple PPI reviews and members of the panel, and a criteria by which an application succeeds or fails. So when coming over to Singapore, it was also one of my main interests to ensure that we aligned ourselves as much as possible with those principles. I've already mentioned previously, I mean, just a brief reminder, I mean, that PPI not being about research carried out to patients, but rather it's carried out with the patient or even by patients as members of the public. And I think that when I'm saying that the systems are varied depending by country, I mean, for instance, one of my roles is as editor-in-chief of a journal, Frontiers in Health Services, and we've been unsuccessfully trying to have editors that would be patients or reviewers that would be patients, and it's simply because the publisher, who has a very large portfolio, is not familiar with the notion, and we are having to educate the publisher about even the possibility, but not to speak about the benefits or even the ways in which this can be implemented. So although potentially of high value, it's not necessarily widely recognized. I'm citing here in the corner, in the right-hand lower corner, to relevant institutions, research institutions in the UK and in Canada, who have really led the way. There are certainly others, but that have while they've developed a body of evidence, governance, and advice on how to implement. And who would be talking about PPI? Well, certainly the patient, but also potential patients, because there is a a pathway, I mean, of help-seeking behavior. There are preventive activities that may be relevant to these people who are not patients yet. People who have lived experience of health conditions are maybe particularly helpful contributors, informants, participants in PPI efforts, as we already seen in previous presentations by Felicity and Sofía. Certainly informal caregivers too, because sometimes we've seen already examples of people with dementia, but even if the patients themselves are able to report the information from the experience, the lived experience of informal caregivers can be hardly replaced by the direct experience. I mean, it's both the case that the whatever caregiver's experience is not a replacement for the true experience of a patient, but likewise, I mean, the experience of caring for someone is also unique. So they also need to be taken into account. And so the different perspectives from which we may need to consider when thinking about PPI. And there is emerging evidence, I mean, that PPI makes certainly patients, research more patient-friendly, research materials and intervention design. But that's, if you want, is at that's the lowest hanging fruit, and when it's basically not significantly modifying the principles under which research is conducted. It's just, if you want, an optimization approach. Arguably, I mean, it's at the other end of the slide, not necessarily an end of the spectrum in relation to how PPI can improve research. It's more accurate reflection of the complexity of the world that we are trying to appraise, and all research to a degree has a level of abstraction and reduction of the complexity of the world. And also, at its heart is a better reflection of what patients need and value. So it's not a luxury. It's not for developed, for high income countries that can afford taking an approach that other environments cannot afford. I would argue that actually is the other way around. I mean, any research, any good research needs to start with the end users, and that's one of the tests of its interest, of its value. So, what's the situation currently in Singapore? It's dire. I'm a member of a number of panels, and there isn't I have not yet seen in my 3 years a review from that focuses. I mean, there isn't any section for making the case for PPI involvement. There isn't in the review forms for the different reviewers a angle score, anything that has related to PPI. No PPI reviews specifically are available. I mean, as a whole, as PPI person, just providing feedback on the PPI orientation of the approach, and certainly there is no PPI member of the panel. Not the narratives for calls do not consider this either. There is a good emphasis, strong and relevant emphasis on previous work and general on impact, but the PPI narrative is largely absent. However, there is a growing interest, and also as the country is making academically, I mean, significant advances in terms of scientific production, academic standing of universities, exchanges with different universities. I mean, as a matter of fact, you may find the Singapore universities topping, in the topping rankings these days. there is appetite, growing interest for this. And I mentioned here international pressure, I mean, in terms of benchmarking, if you want. And the narrative at present is still how much is the public ready for this. And most efforts are, very much researcher led, so as in individual researcher led. We certainly are, I think I can anticipate a pathway where it will become the new normal, that it will be develop supportive infrastructure, and that we clearly make sure that that researchers see this part of their remit. So if there's a need to educate the population on the possibilities, that it is also to a degree with high level of engagement of the researchers themselves. But I mean, that's something that we would like to see happening. Perhaps this is also can give you an impression of where we are in Singapore. It was the Open Voices Network was announced with much fanfare by LKC Medicine, Nanyang Technical University here, and it was launched just a few months ago. I mean, in the end of last year, and it is basically a network of 40 patient, caregiver, and public partners with a variety of health conditions, from cancer and diabetes to eczema and dementia. And it was announced as the first of its kind among medical schools in Singapore. And I mean, some of these, I mean, I'm not diminishing in any way the efforts, but some departments in the UK may benefit from having such simply a PPI group of this nature, specifically for the projects of a single department in the UK. So the fact that this is groundbreaking stuff in a specific medical school in Singapore, and announced and launched actually with a full day event, gives you a bit of a sense of where we are. Briefly, what are we doing in our department? We're making, we ensuring that there is a PPI educational bit in our monthly departments, in which we provide examples of PPI in both quantitative and qualitative research. As you will have surely experienced, qualitative researchers have a more natural inclination to be open to the idea and very clearly see the opportunities where, I mean, some people I myself, I mean, most of my research has been quantitative in nature, but I would agree that some of my more quantitatively oriented colleagues may have maybe a bit more reluctant. And also, what are best practices, including resources. Okay. Then we have a PPI challenge, which is basically no application from now on will be submitted without a explicit role of PPI in whatever form. So these are three that we are currently have recently submitted in the last few weeks. We are currently developing a PPI panel ourselves for our department, and we're also leading efforts across the Primary Care Research Alliance in Singapore, which brings together the three departments of family medicine in the country across the three medical schools. And we also leading within our university the PPI group leadership, because the university is also recognizing the needs and has identified us with some expertise in the area. Trying to move slides and now it's not working. Okay, so that's basically the perspective from Singapore. I'm aware that we technically have only 5 minutes. I would like to check with Sofía and Felicity whether you would be able to extend your participation by another 5 minutes or so, if necessary.
Yes, that's fine, Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you. And it's just to ensure that we have the opportunity and to answer some questions. And apologies from some of the technical problems that we have experienced through this. I'll stop sharing, and hopefully at least you can see, even if not the faces, the people participating. Please add any questions you may have to the chat. And also raise your hand if you would like to ask one. I'm in the situation in which I'm both the chairperson, a presenter, and the technical person. So it's a bit of a complicated. I'll do my best, but also to because I know that some people may be a bit more reluctant to ask questions. I would perhaps start to make this most useful. Felicity, based on your experience, is there any specific advice you would like to give people who may be considering developing PPI in their countries that may less be familiar with even with the notion? Any piece of advice that you would like to highlight for them?
Well, I think probably the most important thing is to actually really engage with your community. And if, whatever the community is, I mean, if your area of research is young people and mental health, then you engage with that community, with people with that lived experience, with people who are caregivers, and with people who are providers. Whatever the context is, whatever your broad remit is, and then see what they think are the issues, and so start with them, rather than think I'm going to research suicide in young people. Maybe they've got a completely different question that actually comes at it from a completely different way, and so I think really the first step is to engage with the community of interest and take it from them.
And Sofía, you come and please raise your hands if anybody has questions in the any of Nayeli, Dulce. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying I'm trying to encourage people to ask questions. Sofía, the environment in which you describe your research and PPI approach would suggest is perhaps less conducive than what we've seen for New Zealand. Based on your own experience, any piece of advice or that you would like to give interested researchers?
Yeah, I think that there is always the possibility of involved organizations, and that could be important in some way, but usually try to find people that could be also not part of a strong organization, because sometimes happen that the people within an organization have they have their agenda. For example, for us in the dementia project, there's international organizations like the Alzheimer's Disease International, and they have places in each country, but they have their own agenda, and we can have some of them in the patient and public involvement. But it's usually useful also to have something that is more representative of the community itself. Have more people than one, because sometimes in their journey they have their own things and could not participate in all the projects.
Thank you. I may be I will be a bit cheeky here, and so please, I ask in advance for apologies to my Mexican colleagues, but I see some critical mass of people joining from Mexico in the chat. I wonder if anybody would feel comfortable just sharing if there is any, what would be the situation in Mexico these days in relation to PPI? Anybody of you that would be either Citlali or Dulce, or would you like to share any what's the situation in Mexico? Okay, we see a message, a response from Dulce. Please feel free to. I was hoping that you would like to share it. Any of you, I mean, joining the conversation, but I'm happy to read as well. No problem. In countries like Mexico, we had difficulties getting older adults to receive and read text messages with information on diabetes care. So I presume that perhaps points out to the difficulty of engaging in patient in public, the patient in public in terms when there are issues with health and healthcare literacy, And I think that the what it translates is actually to a degree, the onus is also on the researcher to ensure that I mean it's a perhaps too comfortable a response to say, oh, but the system doesn't recognize it. The patients and the participants don't know enough about this. They don't have the literacy to help. I think that the onus is on us to make sure that we create the circumstances, a situation in which patients, a member of the public, can make can contribute to shaping the research. Citlali, I can see your image now. Is it that perhaps you want to say something?
Solo que en español se podrá.
Oh, claro, claro. Yo traduzco. I will translate if necessary. Please, adelante.
A ver, estoy entendiendo lo que está mencionando es que si involucramos a los pacientes en las investigaciones y que tanto ellos están entendiendo lo que están haciendo o lo que nosotros estamos investigando.
Sí.
Entonces, bueno, pues todo depende también. En caso de México tenemos diferentes regiones y formas de entender, formas de hablar. El norte tiene cierto vocabulario, ciertas palabras que son propias y que pues se entienden entre ellos, cosa que esos mismos vocablos, esas mismas palabras comunican otra cosa en el sur del país o incluso en el centro, que es una mezcla el caso de Ciudad de México es una mezcla del norte, del sur de todo el país. Entonces eso dificulta, al menos para nosotros, tendríamos que tropicalizar nuestros cuestionarios, nuestras encuestas para que pues podamos tener un resultado uniforme. Por eso es que pues hay que pues tener o unificar criterios, pero para cada región. No sé si así entendí el concepto de lo que usted está hablando de los pacientes.
Voy a intentar traducir en versión resumida y perdón, es para él. I'm not checking either whether people understand Spanish in the today, just because it's recorded. I cannot check with whoever sees it afterwards. So I watches this afterwards. So I will have to briefly summarize, and apologies if it's a redacted version. So basically, Citlali was raising the issue of the different ways in which people communicate. I mean, the language that is being used in different parts of Mexico, and that also makes it necessary to adapt for the research teams to adapt to these different modalities, which I understand that as applied to PPI makes also necessary to, if you want at some higher level, I mean, not just the matter of language, but also, I mean, the different ways in which people see things and contribute and perceive. So, of course, language is one of the barriers that may stand between the different people contributing to a research project who are patients but we can need also to think also in relation to their own lived experience, their own socioeconomic background, their own the different professions, etc., or even familiarity with the condition based on personal or familiar experience. Thank you, Sitali, very much for your contribution. I'm aware that we are over time. I would like to, just to invite a final comment from each of our speakers, and then I will close the seminar, starting with Felicity, perhaps.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I guess my advice to researchers is you might not be able to do the full engagement with communities all the way through your project, but at least just start. See how much you can actually engage with the various stakeholders who will be the recipients, the users of your research, and see if you can keep extending that to involving them in as many or as every step of the project as you can. So maybe small beginnings and spread it out. Thank you, Tima.
Thank you. Sofía.
I was without a microphone. I think that trying to look for ways to involve more vulnerable people could be challenging, but also rewarding in all the research projects. And also for researchers and teachers that teach research in the universities, could be interesting to talk more about that and put examples of that in their teaching methodology classes in order to the students think about this and started to produce researchers with involvement of the public and patient.
Thank you very much, Sofía. So I've talked the most of everybody, so I won't have a concluding remark for myself. Just perhaps let me share the present. It's just a slide with our next seminar, so that you can also have a preview of what's coming. So first of all, let me thank all the Felicity and Sofía for their contribution, for preparing the slides, for joining today, and for being accommodating with some of the technical issues that we experienced this morning. And for everybody else as well, thank you for participating, for contributing to the discussion. This is what we will be looking at next month. So it's about research networks, and we will be benefiting from presentations from Nigeria, South Africa, and the United Kingdom this time. And the seminar will be hosted and chaired by Professor Mehmet Akman, the chairman of the Working Party. So thanks, everybody, and I hope you have a good evening, morning, and if you're seeing this recorded, rest of the day. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.